Hey everyone, today I'm going to explain the advantages and disadvantages of longer focal length lenses and wider apertures in the media pit for concert photography. Along with those explanations, I'm going to show you photographs I've shot of 8 different bands or artists and explain what is going on in each of the photographs. I'll show you the settings that I used and I'll tell you why I used them to get what I needed to get out of these photographs. Okay, I'm going to be pretty blunt and pretty honest. A lot of people do not use longer focal length lenses in the pits or at close range. One, because it is more difficult to do than if you take a wide angle lens or a 50 millimeter and use it to photograph the band. It also gives you a very limited uh, area in which you're able to photograph. So if you're looking for multiple band members in the photograph from the pit area, you're not going to find it very often. But what it does is it gives you more of an environmental portraiture kind of aspect for your main artist. And I'll show you in the video what I look for to determine if I've got a good, worthy photograph, and what aspects I'm looking at, and I'll show you what to look for in those photographs. Okay, most of y'all that have been watching my videos know that I'm very, very blunt, and I will tell you that probably 80-85% of all concert photography is garbage. But one man's garbage is another man's treasure. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and it's like modern art. If you either like it or you don't, and it's up to you to make that determination. But what I look for when I actually photograph, and especially at close range with the long telephotos, is I look for certain details. I'll look for the sharpness of facial hair in artists' beards, their eyelashes. I'll look at any kind of markings. I've got one photo I'm going to show you where I can read "sure" on the microphone, or I'll look at the microphone's pattern, its net pattern. I'll look at things like text on hats. I'll look at things like text on shirts, on guitar straps. I'll even look at the holes that make the adjustments for the guitar straps. So that's how I determine sharpness. And a lot of concert photographers, when they shoot with wide angle lenses or 50 millimeter lenses wide open, they don't get that sharpness. So what happens is the longer the focal length lens, the less depth of field plane you have. So with a wide angle lens, you may have the whole entire stage on in focus. With a 200 or 300 millimeter lens, at 200 or 300 millimeter lens, and the aperture at 2.8 or lower, you may have one eye in focus and one eye that's not in focus, even though you got one of those fancy new mirrorless cameras that focuses on eyes. It still may be a problem. So I'm going to explain how we get what we want in the photograph actually sharp, and how we deliver that. So the first shot we'll look at is going to be of Zach Harmon, and on the slide I will show you the picture of Zach. I'll tell you a little bit about what I looked for in what is why things are a certain way, the reason they are, and we'll do that right now. The photograph on the left is of Zach Harmon, and that's the finished product. The one on the right is also the finished product, but if you look at the photo, you'll see red arrows, and you'll see the headstock of the guitar is out of focus. You'll see there's a cross uh, on his guitar strap. It's out of focus. His hat, the bands in it are out of focus. But if you look closely, his facial hair is in focus. The hat is probably 2 inches from his face. The guitar head is probably about a foot and a half. And the guitar strap section is right about maybe 8 to 10 inches. So you can see that you have real shallow depth of field in here and not much room for error. If you zoom in and look at his facial hair, you will see that it is sharp. It's tack sharp, and that it is in focus. Speed is 1/60th of a second at f2.8. It is using 9-point dynamic AF and is probably at about ISO 1600. This shot is of Andrew Junior Boy Jones, and you can see that his glasses, his frame on his glasses are in focus. The guitar head and the neck are out of focus. So this shot is very similar. You also notice that his watch is out of focus. Here are the settings for this photograph. You will notice that the focal length of the lens is 200 millimeter and the aperture is f2.8. The shutter speed is 1/80th of a second, which is extremely slow, and for this focal length you have to be rock steady in order to achieve this. The ISO is 1600 and the focusing is 9-point, and it uses spot metering and 9-point focusing. This photograph is of Aaron Copeland, and if you'll look at the photograph, you'll see his mirror sunglasses. The image is sharp. You'll see the top of his hat, the patch is sharp. His guitar strap is sharp. His head of his guitar is sharp. The text on his sleeve is sharp. The background is not, and this is intentional. So what we did here was we used a extremely small f-stop or aperture. The settings for this, the lens's focal length is 145 millimeter. The aperture is f8 and the shutter speed is 320. This is taken in bright daylight, so ISO is probably 400, which allows for the small f-stop and the higher shutter speed. This photograph is of Jessie Spradlin, and if you look real close, you'll see her strings on her guitar in focus. The Shure on her microphone is in focus, and you can even read where she uses a Martin and Company guitar right there on the screen. The focal length of the lens this time is a little short. It's 112 millimeter. And if you look at the aperture, it's at f5, and the shutter speed is 1/640th of a second. So it's kind of short, but the ISO is also 1600, so you're able to get the higher shutter speed and the smaller f-stop at the same time. I shot this photograph of Alan Haynes at the Dallas International Guitar Festival. If you'll notice, the pickups in his guitar are in focus. The head of his guitar is not. The brim of his hat is in focus, and you can clearly read his t-shirt. This shows you how close things are together that are in focus and are not in focus, and this is one of the attributes or the characteristics of using a longer focal length lens. In this case, the focal length of the lens is set at 135 millimeters. The dynamic area autofocusing is set at 9 points. I focus generally most of the time on the nose of the artist, right on the face. If you'll look at the headed stock of the guitar, it is out of focus. The pickups are in focus. The brim's in focus. And the aperture is set at f4, and the shutter speed is 1/60th of a second, which is pretty good for handheld at 135 millimeter. This is shot in a warehouse, and if you can look at the top of the photograph, you will see it's very light in the back. That's where streaming sunlight was coming in, and it's very dark in some places. So I use spot metering in this case, as always. Here we have a photograph of Aaron Watson that I took at Billy Bob's Texas in Fort Worth. If you look at it, you can see the pattern in his shirt is in focus. The earpiece in his ear is in focus. Most of this photograph is completely in focus except for the headstock of the guitar, which is probably a foot to 18 inches from his face. There is a lot of heavy backlighting in this photograph, and that causes some issues on its own. The settings for this photograph are the focal length is 185 millimeter. It's a dynamic autofocusing 9 points. Its set shutter speed is 1/400th of a second at f4, and this, like I said, this has got a lot of heavy backlighting, so I focused and metered right off Aaron's nose and his lips, and that's why I have a lot of this in focus. If you notice also the headstock of his guitar is out of focus. That tells you probably you've got a depth of field range of probably less than 18 inches. Hey everybody, when you use one of these bad boys, you got to be careful because you cannot see the focusing real well with the playback on the video screen on the back of the camera. Can't see it through the video. There's no video viewfinder, no EV, so you can't do it there either. So you got to be very careful. There's a button on the Nikons, I assume the Canon and the Sonys also, where you can zoom in and get better detail on the back screen. And that's one of the things that is very helpful. You can do that. But be aware that when you use this type of lens, that you have a shallower depth of field than if you use something that's a little bit shorter, this kind of type of lens. And it's one of the just natures of the beast. So anyway, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.